Now, technical notes on the 2012 Vale Pinot Noir. These wines, they're made of lots of little individual wines. These batches of wine, E4, GHF, these are all things that we have identified the block, that part of the vineyard is different enough to keep that wine separate and just see how it develops. So this wine is made of approximately 20 or so batches. Some of it's hand-picked, some of it's machine-picked. The hand-picked stuff, if the stems are nice and ripe-ish, then I'll think about maybe doing some whole bunch fermentation on that. So typically that would be something along the lines of maybe 15% of the ferments are 50% whole bunch. So whatever that works out to be. Everything is treated more or less the same. We use open fermenters whenever we can. Sometimes the logistical constraints of vintage mean that there are some static fermenters that are used, but I prefer either to have little 800 to 1,000 kilo pots, or we also have some 2-ton open fermenters that I like to use an irrigator on, which is very gentle tannin extraction. Those wines actually are always very soft and powdery and really lovely, delicate tannin structure. Anyway, 2012 vintage, very low yielding, very intense, quite tannic fruit. We normally handle the ferments very gently anyway, but in 2012 probably more so because I was very wary of not creating something in that was too extracted and, you know, overblown. The challenge in 2012 was that because the yields were so low, you had to make some pretty quick picking decisions. I don't see any overripe characters in the 12, which is great. It's in these low yielding vintages that's, you know, you're more likely to slightly let the fruit go slightly too long. Don't see that in this wine. So hand plunged, everything that's in a pot just gets hand plunged with a little steel plunger, and that's probably 3 times a day. And then based on, you know, those ferments, there's no sulfur used, so they start fermenting probably at the end of the second day. And then third day they start really cranking, and then usually if I get around to it, I'll inoculate with a packet yeast in on top of the natural bugs just to make sure that they finish off nice and dry. Once I have confirmed with analysis that they are dry, I mean once they start tasting dry and the hydrometer says they're dry, confirm it with the spectro. And then if the tannin is in a good place, then we press. Now the pots just get shoveled out, but first the free run gets sucked out, run through the press just like, you know, acting as a strainer there, and then that free run goes straight into barrel on full solids. So, and those wines stay there to go through malo naturally, and the first time they see sulphur is just prior to bottling. We use a positive pressure gas spear, so they call them a bulldog pup. It's a spear that goes in and then you push CO2 in, and then that pressurises the barrel and pushes the wine out without the use of a pump. It's very gentle. Love it, love it, love it. So then once we decide which of the barrels is good enough to make the grade, usually they all go in unless there is some slight fault that's developed, like there may be a little bit of oxidation sneaking in, and because of the full solids, you get the odd one that goes a bit stinky, but I like to keep monitoring that through the year, so if they pop up then I sort them out as soon as they arise, rather than leaving them develop in barrel and then having a wine later on that's a bit more difficult to deal with. So the approach for making Pinot here has been getting simpler each year, and we really like to just step back and let the fruit come through. I guess it goes for all Vale wines that the winemaking has been getting simpler, and it's just the quality of the vineyard dictates the quality of the fruit, not rocket science. So that's probably getting close to the end of that wine. It's once it goes to barrel, it's sort of cold stabilised. In 2006 I had an issue with some crystals in the 06 Pinot, so since then I've been kind of cold stabilising, by which I mean the wines go to tank. They sit at about somewhere between -1 and 1 degree for about a week, which gets rid of most of the tartrates that might form in the bottle. And it's also, I'll add a little bit of gelatin just to aid in filterability. So after it's been sitting there for a week, racked off, cross-flow filtered, sterile filtered, and bottled under screw cap with half bottles, regular sized bottles. And I think we had magnums in 12, I can't remember. Sometimes it's a bit tricky getting the glass, but normally we would do 3 different formats. That's about it, but if there are specific questions like clones and oak and all that sort of stuff, feel free to drop me an email or get a hold of me on Twitter. Later, nerds.